recording. All right. So I'm Charlie Cho.
I'm Norman Yeung.
And Norman's here from Toronto.
I am. I'm originally from here, though. I'm an East Van kid. Grew up here.
And we're just totally used to this crazy new medium. We're not sure who to look at because it's polite and yet.
I'm looking at. I have 3 points.
I feel there's a slight lag.
Is there?
I don't know. It's so weird. Anyways, let's talk about Anne Darling.
Sure.
I mean, there's so much, but let's talk specifically about this thing.
I'd love to. Yes.
I'm going to ask the boring question first. What is it?
Anne Darling is a film that I've been working on it for, I'd say, maybe 3 years now, but only in the writing level of it for all those years. And it was just about 1 year ago when I finally decided to, okay, let's make it a real thing then, instead of letting it sit, draft after draft in my hard drive. So I approached Aaron Kopf, who's a friend of mine, who's also a film producer and filmmaker. And I said, Aaron, here's my script. What do you think? And he gave it a read and said, yeah, man, let's make it. It was a short film, and we recently we did a Kickstarter campaign for it, and it was quite successful. We raised 119% of our goal, so we made almost $24,000 of $20,000 goal. And that's thanks to so many people, by the way. It's just because the way crowdfunding works is just mind-boggling about the amount of begging that has to be done. And now that we have this nice little nest egg that is a substantial bit of money to make a short film, I've always thought of it as being a feature too, and not so much as Anne Darling being the short film being stretched out into being a feature-length story. More, Anne Darling the short film is one chapter of several chapters to make a bigger story. And so at this point in time right now, at this very turn of 2014, I'm writing the feature that includes the short film Anne Darling, and after the feature script, the first draft is written. That's when I and the other producers will sit down, suss it out, and see if we can get traction to make the feature move forward.
Yeah.
Yes, because I mean, basically the funds we raised for Anne Darling will make the short film. Mm-hmm. But whether it remains just a short film or as one chapter of the bigger film is to be decided soon. But the money is going towards Anne Darling.
Now, you have also made, and I've seen this short film, and have there been 2 of this trilogy already done?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What's it called again?
Well, 2 of my earlier short films are Marnie Love and Hello Faye.
Right.
And Anne Darling follows the same title pattern, similarly in terms of meter and all that, a woman's name. But it's not really a trilogy.
But you did have a trilogy in mind, or not? Or you just said that?
No. If ever the word trilogy has been attached to me thus far, it might be for some plays I've been working on. That would be a bunch of T's. My first full-length play that got produced is Pu'er, a T, and I'm currently working on Oolong. I've been working on that for a long time. I write really slowly, and I imagined the third play to be. I've forgotten actually what I think lychee, but I haven't really decided on that one yet. Yeah, but they're stories of Asian Canadian families nowadays.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's a very. I would like it to be a contemporary take on where we're going. For instance, just to button that.
Yes.
What does that mean, right? Being an Asian Canadian nowadays. The Oolong is all about interracial families, because that's where we are. That's where we're going.
Mm-hmm. So, despite what I might have misunderstood, so Anne Darling is not part of that. Like, anything said about a trilogy with regards to your films was clearly...
I wouldn't say clear. No, I don't think you'd be completely mistaken in believing that. Because of my earlier short films, Marnie Love, Hello Faye, one could assume that Anne Darling could fit in that.
But that's on how you see it.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
It is not a trilogy, but it sure sounds like one.
Okay.
Yeah.
To someone who doesn't know the story, how would you describe what the story actually is about Anne Darling?
Well, for Anne Darling... I might have to differentiate between saying the short film or the feature because
Okay.
the feature is as yet unnamed, but And Darling is where we're going to start because
Yes.
that's the
Let's talk
that's what
about that.
Yeah. We have a character named Daniel who is depressed, and he tries to shake out of his depression by finding stimulation somehow. And the larger picture of that, I'm not even going to just be all synopsis, but I want to talk about the
Sure.
bigger
Cool.
context, of course. Yeah, that relates to the story. I find that when we are extremely sad nowadays and depressed, etc., and I'm closely, I have close relations to the world of depression with friends and such, so I understand a lot about it. Um, and we seem to be a lot more depressed nowadays, or at least it's out in the open more, which is good. But the ways we try to shake off this sadness or escape it, there are many ways we do it, which are not necessarily the best ways. Drinking a hell of a lot is one way. You could do a lot of drugs if you want. You can go to a lot of parties. You could avoid the problem. You could avoid seeing a doctor. You could avoid getting a prescription, or you could get a prescription or counseling or whatever it is, or go have sex. And the reason I'm bringing up these kinds of things is that how do we escape sadness? And that's basically what Anne Darling is about. Is this character Daniel? He sets up through a chat line a meeting with an older woman to meet up for sex. And when they meet, he discovers that she reminds him of his mom, and he reminds her of her son, and they have some family issues of their own. So their meeting for sex is actually way more detailed with unexpected connections.
Yeah.
And so that makes their so-called escape from sadness a whole lot messier than they expected. And then he ends up going to a party where he meets a young woman who's a writer like him, and she shows him a bit more, a different kind of happiness, a suggestion of happiness to escape. That is actually a bit more fruitful than what he encountered with this sexual encounter that was actually not helpful. It was just distraction. So basically, he will end up looking for more, thinking about professional help, which is something, another way of escaping sadness that really ought to be tried, rather than sex and drugs and booze.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bigger story too about the feature, which is yet to be made or written, is about how do we escape sadness.
Right.
And what I'm interested about is the more sordid side of escape, which is the sex, partying, drugs, all that booze, because they are really not. They're good distractions, but they certainly don't really solve things. But they're interesting stories.
Exactly, because I'm guessing that in moderation, that's what you do. That's what a lot of us do.
Certainly.
In moderation.
Yeah, I think we all do. Yeah. I mean, what? Well, here's the easiest cliche about you're feeling sad, so you're going to go eat a box of chocolates. Or, oh man, I feel so depressed, that whole chocolate cake there looks so good. Yeah, that's kind of funny, sort of. But it is, it's certainly not as devastating as, drinking yourself to death or banging everyone in sight or whatever, sad people do to try to escape it.
Mm-hmm.
But we've known of it forever about you try to transcend your sadness with another sensation that is not really helpful at all, but it sure makes you feel good for a moment.
I'm gonna just mention something. And I think we're both admitting that there are times in which you go to these dark, depressing places. I mean,
Sure.
It's totally human. I mean,
Absolutely.
we are, artists, creative people, and that's one of the palettes we go to. And one of, and maybe this goes to that in a different way, which is, in order to come back up, you see how far you go down, like in one way or another. Again, like you don't have to literally go with the dangerous stuff,
Certainly
but it's
not.
just like,
Yeah.
you hermit for X number of
Yes,
days,
absolutely,
and then
absolutely.
you just go, all right, I've had enough. I'm going to
Yeah.
clean up, shave, and just
Yeah.
like step out the door.
Yeah. I think that's something we probably have to learn more for ourselves, and I think that comes with maturity as we get a bit older. And that's something on my mind a lot now, all the time. It's just about the idea of maturing, because I'm, no longer 16-year-old. But about what we with experience we learn how to take care of ourselves. And there was a time when I felt extremely invincible when I was younger, and if I felt troubled or stuck or whatever it may be, I kind of felt like just avoiding it, just disregarding such things, rather than taking the time that's required to actually work through it or give the body and mind the rest it needs. Just like how you said, maybe you do want to crawl into a dark hole, right? And maybe and I think if that's what we need in order to reset ourselves to move forward to repair from it, we should allow that. Or if we also need help with that because it's just too hard to get
Right.
out of,
Yeah.
then we ought to recognize that there is help available. Even, and that sounds so PSA, help available, but I'm talking like even calling up a friend, you know. And in my own moments of sadness, I have drank a whole lot of booze with friends, and those were the friends that helped me out actually because they were also sad in their own ways, and we just drank ourselves into oblivion. But we picked ourselves up from it. I feel like maybe if I get really sad next time, I probably won't. I'll call a teetotaling friend who is going to invite me over for coffee and just water. Yeah, yeah. But don't you feel the same for yourself now that you're no longer a 16-year-old
That's
yourself?
true. That's true.
Have you learned to take care of yourself better?
It varies. I think trying to know what the baseline is, because sometimes I find it very interesting to, now that I work in sort of like I'm not front facing anymore. Like I
Right.
used to not only I mean, even when I was in radio, I need to pick up the phone, but sometimes people
Yes.
come into the studio and you greet them, and so you're public facing. And then I would meet people, I'd give out business cards, and that kind of stuff. But now I'm more or less like I'm in my office. Like I don't interact with the public.
Right.
I just email, and I don't even pick up the phone very much anymore. So I've allowed myself. I think it's kind of liberating sometimes, in which. I'm just going to be very basic. It's not totally the perception of the nerd, like the bloated, never showers kind of guy.
Certainly
But
not,
like
yeah.
I get to just like, and I did this in the past year. I just let my hair grow for about a year.
Yeah.
I
It
just
looks great, by the way. You're in a band,
it's
aren't
on
you?
the long right now.
Are you a
Like
drummer
this
or a
actually.
bassist? What's the name of your band? I'm kidding.
Right.
It's, yeah.
But yeah, so that kind of stuff. So knowing what that is, like sometimes you do feel like making yourself fancy foods, but then sometimes, like if it's just a matter of not going out to eat, just
Yeah.
like get yourself basic ingredients, put it together, eat it.
Yeah.
It's just like, so certain levels of those things, like what is important to you. I mean, at various levels, right? Like as a writer, sometimes like. Would you hibernate, just like focus on that thing for X number of period, and then emerge later on, or is it about? I mean, for me, I am a person of ritual. It's a pattern.
Right.
Like once once it becomes a habit, then I can do it easily. And I know that about myself. So if I want a good habit, then I'll make it a habit. Or if I'm not ready for it, then I'll just go, okay, you know what? It's not a part of my routine yet. I'll get there maybe later on.
Yeah.
But,
I fully agree with you. So much of what you said applies to me, and
Cool.
and I feel like there are so many topics within that I want to respond to. One that just jumped off right off the bat,
Okay.
though, is about how you said you're not ready to
Yeah.
make that your habit yet if
Yeah.
it's not already a
Some
part,
things.
but maybe later.
Yeah.
And I found about this is something I've worked with over the last few years with acting is now I don't want to use the word method because that's used incorrectly so often, but in talking about the method approach to acting and using real experiences to build truthful performance, we as an actors who believe in this stuff sometimes use a traumatic event that we actually went through. And this could lead to it's self-torture, and actually is not necessarily beneficial to the art, because we are, after all, we're crafting a performance. It is artistic. And it occurred to me, I don't think I experienced this. I came to this epiphany not by my own need, but I've applied it later. I first heard it, I think, from some other actors, maybe some renowned ones that we all know about that are famous. I can't remember. It's been a long time.
Sure.
But it came down to this: if you can't use, if you're going to play a scene where someone has died, where your mother has died in the scene, and your actual mom died 8 months ago, it sounds really awesome to be able to use that, but it might not be right. It might be too soon, or it just might be completely inappropriate to use that life experience, whether it was your mom dying 8 months ago, or 10 years ago, or 30 years ago. Still, if you're not ready to use it, then don't. And I feel artists, or human beings, but in this case, us creative people, we do masochistic stuff often, where we feel like we have to torture ourselves in order for it to mean something. And I'm not going to debunk that thought. I sometimes do feel like a certain amount of suffering leads to really good art. But I feel like if we're not ready, then put it aside. It'll be there if needed later. Or maybe never. And I want to equate that to what you're saying about your habit, where with basic living habit or creative habits like writing. If it's not there yet, there's no need to force it. It could come later. Yeah.
Creative habits, that's actually a big thing, which, to be honest, I've struggled with as of late. I think I realized that as much as writing is an individual's work, you sit down and you write and you compose, I still found, like, for example, when I used to write more regularly for Rice Paper Magazine, or when I was part of a sketch comedy group, writing, that was joyful because even though you were writing, it was like you were sharing immediately. In the case of the sketch comedy group, at a table, or feeling this larger perception because with the magazine, like, you would feel that there was a larger world that had these connections to it, and you would go, oh, that's kind of like indirectly one way or the other a Rice Paper experience, which in a weird, well, not weird, this is actually one of them, because we met through me being at a library and you coming up to that table and going, hey, so that happens.
Yes.
But so that relationship between a community in one way or the other, like whether it's a sketch comedy group or a larger community of readers or artists, it was allowed you to be active, yet at the same time, it was when I was in it during my worse or less good times, it was like, wow, what a burden. Like, I have to bear this burden of, if only I were free, if only I didn't have to do this, if only I didn't feel beholden to this. But now, since then, because I have kind of reached that liberated state. Like, us doing this now is not beholden to any of those things. But it's become harder because it's not routine. At least within that structure, there was a routine for it. It's like, sure, you felt beholden, but like, hey, like 4 times a year you put out a thing, or however often it was. And so what drives you? Because I think you, and I've said it before, that you're fairly productive for an artist of which there are, not everyone is. Not everyone stays productive on these various levels. How do you do it?
Wow. Well, I struggle with it all the time, to be honest. And I think, I would assume every artist does struggle with it too. And beholden is a good word, because I feel, for me, actually, maybe we're a bit, I shouldn't say opposite, but I think we might have a different pulls.
Okay.
Whatever pulls us to move forward creatively. Because for me, I do need to feel beholden.
Okay.
And you said for you, the idea of
being
beholden,
it worked. It
works, yes.
But at the same time,
I know what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
I mean, you're an individual. I don't know how much of the creation comes from you or go ahead.
I need to. No, please. I'm totally enjoying sharing these thoughts between us. The idea of being beholden is what I need, and I've learned throughout my years to sum it up in one way. To make things, to get work done. Not only do I need a deadline, I need a deadline with consequences. because you could easily ask a friend to be your dramaturge or your script story editor and say, okay, March 1st is when draft 3 is due. Okay, comes March 1st, you're not ready, so you say to your friend, oh, come on, just another week, and your friend's like, fine. That's great, but what if it was a deadline on March 1st that if you missed it, you wouldn't get money to pursue the production of it? A whole cast and team will not be able to rehearse or go to camera, or something will fail if you don't complete your shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I need. And that's it's not the easiest thing to find, actually, to be beholden to some people, which is why it's easy to let a certain piece of work move extremely slowly or sit on a back burner for years,
Mm-hmm.
Unless someone is waiting for it, and not casually.
Mm.
Something that will suffer if you don't get your shit done. So yes, it can feel like a slog sometimes, and feeling beholden is not a great feeling, but it gets me worth it.
So concretely, like you're talking about like festivals or that kind of thing,
Mm.
or what are you talking about concretely?
Everything that is rather official, I'd say. Yes, if it's a festival submission deadline or any submission deadline, if you don't meet that deadline, then your thing won't get put up.
Mm-hmm.
It won't move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we take it to like a more commercial level, you won't be able to shoot this show, and there will be dozens of people whose livelihoods are depending on it for their pay, etc., or even your own. Like there are certain deadlines that you cannot miss,
Mm-hmm.
and those deadlines seem to work the best for me. I think a lot of artists that I've spoken to who also procrastinate. That's actually probably the most shared trait between artists is
Mm-hmm.
procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
And but in order to create a deadline for yourself that is just as important is really hard. Have you ever been able to create a deadline for yourself, a creative deadline, where there's no one waiting on the other side, yet you still had the urgency to complete it?
That's a really good point. Probably not. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes in terms of, as you say, stories, sometimes stories need to take that amount of time.
Yes.
Like Twisting Fortunes began as an idea, and it began as a radio play, which never really became that wasn't actually the form it wound up being a stage play, and I mean, sure, there were deadlines, and it was true. Like once we booked the theater, and then that was going to happen.
Yes.
Like that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's like jump rope, right? Just waiting until which cycle do you jump in on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that.
You know what? An image that I've created for myself to keep myself moving forward is. Okay, I actually don't usually like talking about projects I'm working on until they're for real happening. Like, for instance, I never like talking about an acting gig that I have until I've actually gone for my costume fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though I've got the contract signed and negotiated and all that, I still don't want to announce it until I know, yep, they've even, I've got my costume, I've seen it in the mirror, and it's for real, I've seen the call sheets
Mm-hmm.
and all that shit. I wait so late in the game. It's a superstition thing. But anyways, so that's my one approach personally to announcing projects.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are quick to announce their projects all the time. That's cool. Everyone's got their own approach.
That's right. So it always seems like they're doing something. It's like, I'm working on a few projects.
True. Yep. And some, for instance, a lot of actors I know, like talking about auditions that are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Everyone has their own approach to how they deal with their work and other people. I personally don't like talking about auditions at all. Most people never know I even had one for a certain thing. It's just my own personal approach. But something that's good about letting people know is that when people know, you're beholden to deliver. Mm. When some people know, the train has started to move then. Mm. And you better hang on to that train and not let go, and you better keep moving forward with that train towards fulfillment. Mm. Otherwise, then there's failure and egg on your face and all that stuff. And importantly,
it's your friends you've let down. Or is
Maybe.
it? Or is it? No?
I don't know. You mean
Just as long as there are
hypothetically?
people, you know? I mean, if you let for example, the idea of having like a lot of your friends tune in, because if you never told them, sure, like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people would have watched that, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people could have been disappointed by your presentation
Right,
or
right,
whatever, your performance.
right,
But because they're your friends who care and know you,
right.
like it means more. Or does it?
Personally, well, I don't know. I think it depends on project to project,
Okay.
really.
Okay.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, though. Sometimes how there's a different feeling with when you're presenting a work to people who have some kind of unconditional love
Mm.
for you. It's not to say all your friends should be yes men, but and yes, it's good to have critical friends too who are
Hmm.
honest
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah, but I think the approach. There's something I really enjoy about presenting work to complete strangers, though.
Okay.
Yes, because I kind of feel their response has less bias,
Mm. Okay.
and the general public has very little to owe the artist.
Right.
And so they can be cruel for one
Mm-hmm.
thing, but they can also be very constructively honest.
Mm-hmm.
And some friends, for the sake of friendship,
Yeah.
might not need to offer a critical opinion.
One thing, it's somewhat related to friendship, but I will admit that social media, like Facebook in particular,
Mhm.
has affected my creative process in a particular way. Like, sure, like on one hand, like if you have a play, like there's a certain level of promotion that you can do with it. But as a writer, one of the things I found quite limiting and in fact kind of intimidating about it is when I was like when I would write for newspapers or magazines and stuff would be out there, I'd go, wow, like being published in the Vancouver Sun meant like
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people
Yeah.
read it, and then but when you reflect the reality is like how many people are actually reading your words, how many people actually care about it, how many people like that level of discussion is not reflected even among like intelligent writer friends on Facebook. They're not going to say, "Whoa, well today I read I was reading the New York, New York Times Magazine today, and I read this excellent article, and here's my analysis." It's like share, like,
Yeah.
and it was kind of soul sucking in a particular way. Like I spent, as an example, like I really cared about what electronic books were doing to the world, and some people thought that it was really cutting into the creative work, it was de-democratizing it because it requires an electronic device to read, and what was that doing? And I spent a lot of time on what I thought was a very thoughtful essay, put it out in the world, and there were kind of the equivalent of crickets. I go, wow, like I know there's an algorithm happening there, but like that's not surfacing, like that's like that payback. And I kind of go, is that an honest reflection, or is it just a weird computer filter, and that's actually not the right medium to be sharing?
I think, and I've experienced the same stuff as you too, and I kind of feel like I no longer try to think of the internet as an arbiter of audience, where I do fall into this mistake every day, all the time. I'm just doing this mistake right now, probably, which is you do something, you put something out there, you make a post on your Facebook wall, or you make a tweet, or you post something on your blog, and then you assume everyone's read it. And when one of your friends says something, and you say, "Didn't you read it? I just wrote it last week. I already talked about that." And you assume they know what you're up to.
Right.
When the fact is, it's so easy to miss everything. Even if what you wrote was brilliant, or your thought was incredibly insightful, or whatever it is, the quality of it might be extremely high and valuable, but the people's access to it, and nowadays is completely un. There's no equity between the quality of what we're doing and the reception of it. There are some meters like, okay, so he's got 10 million followers, I guess he's famous.
Right,
There's
yeah.
other stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? But then, to be honest, and this sounds so terrible, but I'll say it, for real. I see some people on Twitter who are, I guess they're kids. They're like 14, 15. I
Right.
can tell
Sure.
because they just are. I run across, you come across everyone on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And some of them have like all these thousands of followers.
Yeah.
And I read some of their tweets, and they talk about regular teen things like high school, and oh, my parents are being really mean to me today, and things that are important to them, certainly,
Yeah.
but to a large audience, I don't really know if the conversation would be at that level of need.
Hmm.
But they have all these followers, and I'm wondering it why like what is interesting enough about this stuff. I'm sounding so bad here, but I
No.
guess I'm kind of saying if you have tons of followers or so many people read a thing,
Right.
that does not mean anything
Right.
about the quality of the content.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and we both know probably in the early days of Facebook, and
Right.
we have friends on Twitter who just friend everybody,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there's that cycle. It's like, oh, all right, hey, that, so that happens. So that you're
Mm-hmm.
right, the number of friends and the followers does not,
Yeah.
in some cases it's less meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how do and this maybe goes into the medium that we choose as creative people, right? I mean, you're making film, you're acting, you're doing theater,
Mm-hmm.
what would seem to be fairly conventional things to a certain extent.
Mm.
Although you are like Kickstarter, you are using it to fund your film. You're also
Mm-hmm.
making it available in digital form. You're part of the rewards are digital scripts of so
Mm-hmm.
there's that element to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose for me, the digital medium offers an opportunity, and maybe that's why I find kind of there's hope. There's a kind of simple. I try to find the opportunity because I mean we make the comparison with Rice Paper Magazine, right?
Yeah.
Like even in 2000 when I was like at home working on a PC trying to create a basic website so that people in Vancouver, were they to go to Toronto, would know what plays were playing on what day and where they could buy tickets online, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like boom, video, post, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's disruptive on many different levels, in a good way and a bad
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. This is something I've realized that the internet has just created more of everything. It's created more shit and more beauty and more brilliance. And basically, I think about one of the great revolutions of the digital stuff is filmmaking media, images especially, right, video, and when digital video became so accessible to everybody, the filmmaking community did worry about an influx of bullshit. And yes, there's a ton of bullshit. There's more bullshit than there ever was in the history of the world. There's so much bullshit now. YouTube is crammed with bullshit. But it's also exposed us to a lot more voices and visions that deserve our attention, that are contributing to us and moving us forward as a culture and as a community. So the internet has basically given almost everyone the tools to do something and have it be shared. And what's being shared is a lot of shit and a lot more good stuff also. So on one hand, I talk badly about the way things are going nowadays with technology, and on the other hand, I'm completely embracing it. And I guess that does link back to what you're saying
Mhm.
about the mediums that I work in are conventional. They've been around for a long, long time. But I have embraced the technological, digital, internet utilities attached to these old forms. Um, it's hard to avoid it. I don't think we should avoid it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in terms of visual arts as well. I mean, you do physical paintings, and yet, smartphone cases,
Yes.
and your images are widely distributed online,
Sure.
and they can become people's wallpapers and that
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yes. Yes.
So, but do you sense like any one of those kinds of experiences is more legitimate than the other? Like, oh, like
Mm.
if you were to see, and I guess there's a part of me that's answering a question, but kind of not, right? Because like a painting that you do on a wall, if you were there and saw it, it would be one experience, except it's no longer there. So this is the only way you can experience it now.
Yeah. I I think this happened a few months ago where I think it was a bunch of this. It's a new innovation that's, I think, taking extremely high quality scans or photos or something, imaging of the world's greatest paintings and such that we all go to the Louvre and MoMA, etc., to look at. And I think that's becoming, it's supposed to be like a library where you could access the world's great art from your desktop.
Mm-hmm.
But legit, like this is not pirated stuff. This is
Mm-hmm.
like, sanctioned, real, highly curated and quality stuff. And I think a woman who was involved in that, she was on this in an interview, and she stressed that as much as this is enriching to culture as a whole, to have access to a real Klimt or a real Braque, rather, on even though on your computer screen, meaning that you don't have to travel to see it because a lot of people can't afford to travel.
Mm-hmm.
But it still will not match the value and experience of seeing these things in real life. So basically, she was answering the question, will this kill the need to go to art galleries and museums? And her answer was no.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that, because there is something about live experience that can never be replicated in any way except through life. And one of my favorite examples of one medium not being a facsimile for the original is theater and live performance, dance, especially dance and certain types of theater. Not so much singing and concerts. I don't think, because there are so many excellent concert films. Of course, no, being in the concert is another experience. Yeah, I'm not saying it can be replaced by concert films, but I guess what I'm trying to say is how many films of a play. I don't mean an adaptation of a play for film. I mean, here's the stage play. Let's film it. That's not very engaging. I mean, there's some ways like the Met Opera does that, and it's great. No, it's great. I'm glad it's there, but it doesn't match, or it doesn't meet the same experience of being there at the same time. If anything, I think if you want to watch a play through a lens, I hope it's kind of a way to encourage you to see their next production.
Right.
Or if this production's still on, if you can get the means, go see it live then. Not like a commercial, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To whet our appetite to want to experience it live. That's one reason why theater isn't dead. We've been talking about it dying forever. With every new invention that's battery powered that's come out, we think theater's going to die. It won't die. It's when theater dies, humans die. When dance dies, when singing dies, when music dies, humans die. Those are, filmmaking could die and we'll still survive. I love film, obviously, but films have been around proper film, cinema has been around for just over 100 years. We've been around for thousands, and so have the essential arts that are live. Writing, too, will die if writing dies, certainly.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's so many ways I could go on this. Like there was a part of me that wants to go the theater route, but before I forget, I am curious about the Kickstarter experience.
Sure.
It's unique. It's the first time you've done it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, why this time?
Well, in terms, it comes down to how do you get money to make your thing, and in Canada, we do rely on the grant system a lot. That's just the way it works here. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, America is the only country that does not have a socialized film funding body.
Okay.
They might have little bits here and there, but I actually don't think I'm wrong. So you might want to Google that and correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong.
Okay.
Like we're not. It doesn't have a telefilm or British UK Film Council, I believe it's called. All these things that you see at the end of a film that's not American, they usually have a government funding body for that film to be made. So we're used to that here, and we rely on it. It's a valuable thing to have, and I've fortunately benefited from that system myself. But it cannot be relied on in terms of, it's not a guarantee. Nor is Kickstarter a guarantee, but you have a direct connection with your potential funders, and you can get the money you need to make your art in 30 days. Whereas the amount of waiting for a grant could be 6 months. And with crowdfunding, you don't have to go knock on the same doors of a guy in a suit who would then ask to do product placement in your thing or something. By the way, I'm not dissing commercial
And you
stuff
haven't done
either.
that.
I haven't done that. I
Yeah.
might have to, and I actually I will want to in my career. I do
Okay.
want to make things that do also rely on conventional funding
Okay.
methods because I want to experience it and do it. Why not?
Mhm.
But I'm also glad I'm getting experience in this new form called crowdfunding, and it's very fun. It's exhausting. I lost 5 pounds doing it. I straight up did. I was obsessed over it because I needed money.
And it's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing on Kickstarter, yeah.
Yes.
And there are other things like Indiegogo,
Yeah,
etc., that
yeah.
work in different ways. But the crowdfunding experience can be fun. It was extremely fun. As exhausting, and it really just took everything out of me. I didn't even sleep. I'm telling you for real. I was like a ragged man. They're like clicking refresh, please, $1 more. You know what I'm saying? It's yeah, and the amount of pride that has to be put aside to ask publicly for funding like this. Hopefully, some people don't have to have difficulty with it the same way I do and did with swallowing my pride and saying, please give me money. It's not easy. But all that stuff was worth it. It's fun in the end. You get to make things for your donors and you get to communicate with them and make friends even with strangers across the world because they believe in what you're doing and you strike up a conversation and it's cool. And there's a real community even with other Kickstarter creators who are making their own campaigns. There's a community that's involved. It's a bit of a Stockholm syndrome actually where we share each other's pain. I'm telling you, I can't. You'll be hard pressed to find many Kickstarter creators who didn't go through hell during their campaign. It's not, yeah, I've seen many people want to give up in the middle of their campaign because it was not moving. And then it's the final 3 days where ideally and often a cascade of money comes in because why? We all procrastinate, that's why. So anyways, and so do I. I procrastinate all the time myself, and I am slow to fund other people's project, but I do kick in there with the money. So it's yes, and again, why do it? Well, everything I just said, it's a nice adventure. Wow, everything I just said doesn't usually come with the grant writing process. You know, grant writing is also laborious and it takes everything out of a person too. But it's not fun. Grant writing is not fun. It's very technical. It's very there is an amount of bureaucracy involved, a whole lot of mystery until later, until the jurors are announced, which is fair. Transparency is great, but it's just a whole lot of I don't know. It's kind of like here it is. What's next? Whereas with crowdfunding, you know what's happening. You're in control of it. You're not getting just enough yet. Like you're in the middle of your campaign, and that meter just ain't going up. Then let's try a new tactic, guys. Let's offer a new reward for $50 or $25, and maybe that'll entice them. And you do it, and yes, some people are like, yeah, I want to do that. Or I think I'd like to give money so I can get that new reward or perk.
Right.
We're pretty much in complete control of our funding. That's brilliant. But and it feels more reliable because you can gauge the progress.
Right.
With the conventional funding methods, oh, it's so Hail Mary. But I'll do it. I've done it, and I think we let's talk about the future of funding then for arts. It'll be a combination of all the above. Some people believe crowdfunding is the way the future will be. I agree. It'll just become stronger and more commonplace. But I don't think it'll be the only way. Certainly the commercial and corporate route of funding for arts will not go away, and there is a great benefit to them also, I have to admit. There are many works of arts and festivals would not exist without a commercial hand. And you can ask anyone who's done an Apple ad who are indie cred, and they'll say the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the socialized method of funding, I hope, will not go away because there is something that's actually that's a benefit that isn't necessarily found in crowdfunding.
Okay.
Is being judged by peers. being assessed by peers and contributing to a community that you're involved in already, and being there. That is a great. There's something there that's valuable also, I think. I've never been a juror, so I don't have the experience of that. But I do know it's all in Canada. It's a jury of peers, and there's something sanctifying about that. Sometimes infuriating, I'm sure, but it's nice to know that it's your fellow sisters and brothers who are looking at your work. Yeah.
One of the things that, and I'm not sure if by the time I hit your Kickstarter page, how much of it had evolved by that time, but it looked incredibly well prepared. And in our conversations, you emphasize it's not just you; it was your full team acting on full pistons.
Oh God, yeah.
So how did you, again, like you pull the trigger at a certain point? How much preparation did you do in advance, and how many pistons were already revving up by the time you hit whatever that button is?
Yeah. I'd say if you're going to do a campaign on Kickstarter, and I can't speak for the others because I have never created on Indiegogo or such. I've only donated. But with Kickstarter, you ought to prepare well in advance. And some things, even though I did my research, to also do your research, it's all out there. Kickstarter is also extremely transparent. They have a policy of whether your project is successful or unsuccessful. It will remain on their website for research and transparency's sake. And so I did I did a lot of research. I visited a lot of YouTube, not seminars, but kind of like what we're doing now, where they talk about how they made a successful campaign, right? And they traded some trade secrets and such. And so I was prepared, but still, I found that in the middle of my campaign, I was doing things that I could have done and should have done earlier, like setting up my media things for interviews and like contacting the media and getting the word out. I did that in the middle of it. I should have done that earlier. I have a team of producers. There was like about 6 of us in total creating this campaign. We hemmed and hawed about creating an Anne Darling Twitter handle account until like the last 10 days, only because we were like, is it really effective, guys? Do we need it? And who's going to take care of it? We already have enough on our plates. And eventually, the only reason I decided to do a Twitter and Darling Film, after all, was when I started to contact film journals and such. It sounded a bit, I don't know, unprofessional or just a bit weird or detached that it was me, Norman Yeung, speaking about this film, but the name that shows up is my name, not the film. And for me to talk about the project as myself, Norman Yeung, in like to give it big ups and all that, made me feel like I don't know, I'm too shy to do that, So if I went under the name of @Anne Darling Film and talked big about the film, then it felt more comfortable because it's the film being represented by itself, rather than me saying, "Hey, check out this great project that I'm making." I don't feel comfortable doing that. Fuck that, But if it's like, "Yo, this is the film telling you that this film is good," that feels better.
That's. I mean, that's one of the things that I find awesome about you, but I still find it funny.
Yeah, I guess.
Like seriously, like how much out there are you? Like you are the who the fuck is Norman Yeung?
Yeah. I kind of I'm a pretty shy and confident guy, I guess. I don't know. I like talking about things that are done. I like talking about things that I'm doing. I don't like talking big about things that have yet to happen,
including things you're trying to get funding for.
Yeah, I don't really like talking about that too much unless it has to be talked about,
right.
Like Kickstarter, where you got to tell everybody.
Yeah.
But back to that stuff about and giving big up your project and announcing it, all that stuff, getting it out there. I could have done a faster job of it on the front end of it. And another key thing, actually, tell you the truth, if we were to get down to it, I just spoke to a friend about Kickstarter campaigns last month, because she's about to start her own campaign, and I gave her a lot of tips. We talked for 2 hours straight, and I told her ahead of time. I told her, I'm happy to share these lessons with you, but it's going to take a long time. It's a lot to say, and she was extremely receptive, and I'm glad she gleaned a lot from what I had to say. But really, to everything I learned about doing just this one campaign, I could talk for 2 hours about, because there's so many ways to um, do things better than the way we did, or also be to reach your goal like we did, and also to make it look better.
Mm.
I'll give that sounds so vague, but one example is um, it helps to make your campaign look healthy right off the start, right
Mm.
at the start. That way it looks desirable, and I guess we like desirable things that are strong and healthy and look like winners, because we like betting on a winning horse.
Mm.
And sometimes we, like me, I do like the underdog, but when it comes to a crowdfunding campaign, it looks good to look strong as fast as possible. Um, I learned that from someone else on
Mm.
YouTube, and from my own experience, I agree 100%.
So you secure like some big funders right off the top.
Yes,
Got it.
if you can. One way to do that is to ask certain, I guess, family and friends who are
Yes.
going to donate anyways.
Yeah.
You tell them, could you please do it on the first day? Yeah. I didn't do that, actually, by the way. We looked weak
Mm.
for a number of days. I'd say up to the first 5 days, I felt like the biggest loser on earth, straight up, because it was not moving. I woke up to after launching. I launched it at night, and then did a night's sleep, and I woke up and I was thinking, all right, that was 7 hours ago, 6 hours ago. Let's see, and it was just like, I don't know, $500. Man, I felt terrible.
Mm.
And but then I knew this ahead of time, that every Kickstarter campaign tends to go through the, I shouldn't say every, oh man, you kind of get me started on this 2 hour everything I learned about Kickstarter crowdfunding. It's like 2 hours. I'll cut it short after this one sentence. I guess is most campaigns will go, the overwhelming majority of campaigns will go through a mid-campaign lull, where it will nary move, and you will feel like shit because you think you will fail, and you will consider canceling. I'm not the only one. I've seen one of my favorite filmmakers, who's famous, go through a recent campaign, and he celebrated. In the middle of his campaign, he said, guys, it's just not going to happen. I'm canceling. And his legions of fans, including myself, said, no, don't. This is the pattern.
Uh-huh.
They will all go through this mid-campaign lull, and usually the money flows in later. Stay in there. And he says, okay. And yes, he was $11,000 more successful.
Wow.
I don't want to say who, because
Sure.
but he did reach his
Nice.
$300-something thousand
Nice.
campaign.
I guess last question related to this, because you're right, we should move off this at some point, is what was the turning point for you? Like you talked about the lull. What was the turning point?
Well, we had two big turning points. The first one was after 5 days of feeling like a total heel, and that nobody loved me, or I felt like nobody loved me and the people on my team, who I thought were pretty strong artists.
Very lovable.
Right? Yeah. I guess no one loves us as a team. We're even more unlovable because we're a gang of unlovable people. Then after about 5 days, we got an extremely generous donation from a very wonderful company who gave us of a substantial amount, and that really helped. It boosted our spirits. It made us, more than helping the project, which with numbers, it made us feel like, yes, I guess we are doing something worth making. And then I went through a long lull where it didn't really move. We're at about 50% for maybe about 2 more weeks. And it was in the final 5 days that I think it might have been when I started offering my paintings at a really low price. I started offering as a reward for $100 donation a small painting, 12 by 12 inches, that at galleries it would normally sell for about 200 and up. And I was offering it for $100, and I kind of was saying, if anyone's ever wanted a painting from me, here's a really cheap chance. Like it's a lot cheaper than normal. If
you were offering like custom stuff as well. Like you're willing to paint patrons into their paintings.
Oh yeah, which is something I enjoy doing anyways, regardless of this campaign. Yeah, I enjoy painting patrons into the work if they want it. And I was basically offering my artwork at prices that are not usually offered, and I think that drummed up some interest because we reached our We reached our $20,000 goal with 3 days to go, which felt really good. We actually reached it before 3 days, um, and that's when we could kick in the stretch goal,
Yes.
which many campaigns do, because $20,000 is not enough to make this film. We need more, and our budget even said that we need quite a bit more. But so we said, can we make 23,000, guys? And we ended up making almost 24,000. So we even surpassed our stretch goal. Um, first of all, I'm thankful for everyone who supported in every way. Like, you also supported too in so many ways. So thank you for getting the word out. Like, even just spreading the word was a great support, because Kickstarter is all about, the more that people know, then the better you have a chance of getting success with it. And so I think that was my turning point, was when I started offering my artwork at a price that is less than usual. But I do have to say, I'm kind of happy that I'm able to roll in my other disciplines into this thing, because it's fun. It's what I can offer, and people like getting objects, like gadgets. That's popular on Kickstarter, is gadgets. But we don't have a gadget to offer, so what can I offer? I'll draw and paint for you, sure. Yeah.
All right, let's pause.
Sure.
You guys.